And welcome back to Game Escape. Today we're going to take a look at some strange import Sega Saturn games. And a couple weeks ago, maybe about a month ago now actually, I did a video reviewing the Sega Saturn. And I talked about how I thought this was a great system to collect for, particularly for those who are just getting into video game collecting. And the reason I gave was that, the Saturn offers such a wide range of titles across so many different genres and across so many different price points. And if you've been following the retro gaming scene, you know that one of the strengths of the Saturn was its position as an import system. There were so many great import games available for the Saturn. So in that video, I said that what I like to do, in addition to collecting the most sought-after Sega Saturn games, I like to just collect cheap import games about which I know little or nothing. And I said that, I call these, I just reserve a day, usually Saturdays, and I call them Saturn Saturdays, which of course might sound a bit familiar because Saturn Day was the name of the ill-fated early release of the Sega Saturn here in North America. But nonetheless, Saturday night, I will sit down, and I usually shop around for these titles maybe about 3-4 weeks, and then I have a day where I just sit down with a stack of really, really cheap Saturn import games and discover some games and some genres even that I did not know existed. And it is quite a lot of fun. So I thought I would just take a sampling of the games that I've picked up recently for the Sega Saturn, in the context of this cheap and strange import game collecting that I've been doing, and just present them to you and hopefully give you guys out there a reason to, in addition to searching for the real gems in the Saturn collection, to take a chance on some lesser-known games because they can be quite fun. And we're going to start off with a game called Blazing Tornado, released for the Saturn in 1995. And this is an adaptation of Fire Pro Wrestling, produced by the same company that made that game, Human Entertainment. And if you're familiar with Fire Pro Wrestling, you'll know that it is revered amongst wrestling game fans because it has a very, very thorough move list, great wrestler creation tools, and even though the graphics were always kind of primitive 16-bit sprites, you could really simulate an exciting wrestling match. And here, they just try to streamline everything. The sprites are a lot bigger, and while the control scheme is largely the same, which means that to initiate a grapple, you just have to kind of walk in to your opponent and then time a button press to pull off a move. They've streamlined the number of moves, and they've kind of put the focus on striking and actually sped up the gameplay just a little bit. Unlike Fire Pro Wrestling, though, the roster is very, very, very limited. You only have 8 characters to choose from, and they're all very cartoony, almost King of Fighters or Saturday Night Slam Masters types of characters, not based on real Japanese wrestlers. And you cannot customize them in any way. It is a lot of fun, but it's very, very difficult. The first match, basically they give you a standard arcade mode, and then you can play like an elimination tournament. No wrestler creation available, but first match is manageable, but as you sort of move on, it becomes very, very challenging, and just the timing on the grappling and the inputs for the various moves is really, really precise, and if you don't hit those buttons at the right moment, you will not succeed. So is this a game, is it a good wrestling game? Well, I would say that the Fire Pro control system is best implemented in Fire Pro Wrestling. Here, it seems like they're trying to create an arcade game around it, and it's not terribly successful, but it's still a lot of fun. And if you are a fan of the Fire Pro series, as I was, You may just want to pick this up for the sake of completing your collection of those games. I didn't even know this existed until I saw it on eBay. I think it was about $5 or $6. And at that price point, being a fan of the series, it was a really, really great pickup. And next up we have Super Dimension Fortress Macross, released in 1997. And this game caught my eye because it was a side-scrolling shooter based on the Macross anime series, and it was a little bit more expensive than I usually pay for this type of game. I think I got it for about $15 shipped. However, that tends to be pretty cheap for Sega Saturn shooters. And so I wanted to give this game a try, and I have to say that its strength is its presentation. It has great visuals for the time, I think. I think these cutscenes are pretty nice considering it was 1997, and it has really, really great sound. But the gameplay leaves a lot to be desired, I think. On the surface, it seems really, really cool because you can transform, your character can transform into 3 different types of ships or fighters. You have the standard jet fighter, and then you can transform into basically a jet fighter with legs, and then the full-blown robot. And it has a little different approach to the shooting mechanics. You can't necessarily shoot behind you unless you're in the form of the robot, and even then it's kind of tricky. But it has these lock-on missiles that will actually track opponents that are behind you, which is kind of neat. What I don't like about this, particularly in the first level, is that you are playing the role, you're playing a side-scrolling shooter, you're playing the role of this, powerful weapon, and it seems like a very, very heavy emphasis is placed on dodging bullets and dodging opponents rather than shooting. And that, to me, took a lot of getting used to. It's just very counterintuitive for this genre. Now, maybe, not being a Japanese speaker, maybe I'm not interpreting the instructions correctly there at the beginning of the stage, but it seems like what you have to do in a lot of these levels is just dodge bullets. At the later levels you can actually destroy enemies, but it's just a lot of maneuvering out of the way of missiles and bullets and explosions, getting to the end boss and trying to beat him. So I can't necessarily recommend this to fans of the genre, but I actually don't know all that much about Macross, but I loved the character design, I love the anime cutscenes, and I thought the sound was just excellent and matched the on-screen action perfectly. So I would say if you're a Macross fan, and if you're trying to just amass a collection of shooters on the Saturn, maybe pick this one up if you can find it at a decent price, but don't go into this expecting a truly great side-scrolling shooter. Now, when you're collecting this type of game, it's very, very important that you don't overpay for these titles, because sometimes you will pick up things that you just can't play due to the language barrier, or quite simply, you'll buy games that are bad. And this example, this is Tokimei Memorial, which was one of the first dating simulators released to home consoles. It started off on I believe on the PC Engine, and then was ported to the Sega Saturn. And this is a game that you really, really have to understand Japanese to fully enjoy. It's not unplayable with limited knowledge of Japanese, but it's certainly not enjoyable. The object of the game is to improve the stats of your character through a variety of different activities. You can study, you can, do scientific experiments or study the sciences. You can improve your artistic skills, your athletic skills, your social skills, and as you level up, you'll have the ability to date different characters at your high school, and each of these girls will have different sorts of preferences, and you'll need to boost different stats to have success in dating them. To initiate a date, you have to, I believe, make a phone call and then enter the date into your planning book, and then you'll have some dialogue options on the date, which will determine your success or failure. Sometimes, if you haven't boosted your stats sufficiently, you just can't. The girls won't accept the date at all. So, I got this for $3, and for $3, I just figured this was a small little slice of gaming history. I know, like I said, this was, I think, one of the first dating simulators. I believe it was very, very popular in its time, but it really isn't a game that you can do much with, and I suspect that even if you do understand Japanese, it's a fairly limited type of experience compared to other role-playing games and strategy games, and probably even dating sims on the market today. So in keeping with the theme of games that you should not overpay for, we have the Combini 2, which is a convenience store ownership simulator for the Saturn, and this is the type of game that you buy for a little cultural experience or some cultural insight. It's a genre that obviously will never be released in the West, and again, this game was $3 or $4, and so I just sort of picked it up to see what it was all about, and you really can't play it unless you understand Japanese. But basically what you have to do is you select a city and then a plot of land within that city on which to build your convenience store. And then it's up to you to stock the store with various items, choose the different shelving options and displays and what goes in them, and try to maximize your profits from both the location of your store and the physical layout and what you have for sale. And once you appoint the store as you see fit, you then at some point click Start, which I could not find for this video, as I have not played this game in quite some time, and customers will sort of come in and out, and you analyze the foot traffic and change things around and try to become more profitable and ultimately build and expand your store. But it's kind of a cute idea. It strangely might even be fun if you could understand it, but certainly not a game that I would pay more than $5 for. Now, when you're collecting for the Sega Saturn, as an import collector, you will notice that things like fighting games and shooters will be the most expensive, because those are games that non-Japanese speakers can play. But I think one of the overlooked genres available to the import gamer is the puzzle game genre. And here you have an example of a cross between Sakura Wars and Columns. This is Sakura Wars Taisen Columns for the Saturn, and it is just a great Columns game. It's unlike the traditional Columns puzzle game. This is a battle version where you are competing against, almost there's an arcade mode where you can compete against various characters from the Sakura Wars series, as well as going through a story mode which has challenges that you have to complete, sort of eliminate gems, get them below a certain line in a certain amount of time, and then actually play against the computer. And the nice thing about this game is in the battle mode, you have the classic Sakura Wars dialogue box where you have just a couple seconds to make a choice, and you can choose a defensive move or an offensive move as you are leveling up your character. The defensive move will eliminate some of your gems, so if your opponent attacks, you still have a chance to win the match. And an offensive move which will actually shoot these dice over to your opponent's side of the screen, and the number on the dice represents the number of turns until the dice become gems. So you still want to color match as best you can, but it's actually really challenging and somewhat difficult. I would say it's more difficult than the original Columns, which I grew up with, and I actually just did a video praising the original Columns on the Sega Genesis and also on the Sega Game Gear. But this is a very fun version. I think it kind of captures the charm of Sakura Wars and actually improves, I don't want to say improves, but it makes Columns, it just gives it a little bit more depth and makes it significantly more challenging and exciting. So this is a game, again, this was maybe $5 or $6, and this represents the type of game that you want to collect when you're in the strange import gaming space with the Saturn. It's completely playable for a non-Japanese speaker. It is lots of fun, and it is very cheap. So I hope you have enjoyed this look at some strange import games for the Sega Saturn. It is just such a fun system to collect for, not only because you have the Radiant Silver guns and the Panzer Dragoon sagas and things like that, but you also have these fun little one-off games that you can find literally all over eBay, both from sellers in Japan and sellers here in the United States, and just have a night where you sit down and discover some games that are kind of getting lost in the passage of time here in the video game industry. So thanks for watching Game Escape, and I will see you again very shortly.